my name's Burton, and I'm interested in stuff. This is based in material culture. Material culture are the things around us and the way things, we get meaning from things. So, what's that about? Based in anthropology, Dan Miller talks about the humility of objects. So we're all sat in chairs. You're sat in a chair? You're sat in a chair. The chairs were here before us, before we came in the room. The chairs existed without us. If we had never come in this room today, the chairs would still be there. And that's the same thing about our clothes. If we hadn't bought the shirt, it would have never been there. Peter Stalebest talks about his wardrobe and the clothes in his wardrobe. And when you take those clothes off, they retain your body shape. They remember who you are. And they become part of our memory. And they tell stories without us. When my dad died, he left a wardrobe full of clothes. Clothes that I tried. Do you want these clothes? The shirt? But they didn't fit me. They were my father's. They had his shape. So when I was thinking about this, I started thinking about shirts. Shirts. Okay. So, shirts are part of our life. They're objects of culture. I wear shirts every day. I look at my wardrobe. What am I going to wear today? How do I feel today? Which shirt is going to tell my story today? Shirts are part of life, and we tell stories about them. We have metaphors. We talk about getting shirty, which in English means like, oh, you're getting uppity. You're starting to argue with me. Don't get shirty. We talk, shirts are part of our capital, production, consumption. American shirts were part of the first fast fashion. They're part of Fordism, the Ford car, the motor car. And so, next slide. You can go on to the next one. And the next one. Several shirts. So clothes are part of our lives. And I started thinking about this. Clothes without the wearer are important to us. I'm going to tell you 3 shirt stories. And these 3 shirt stories are then going to talk about the stories of objects. So 3 shirt stories. The first shirt story. Next slide. I was in an antique shop in York, where I live. York, if anybody knows it, is an old medieval city. We have lots of antique shops, and I was going through the antique shop. And there in the antique shop was a Victorian shirt, collarless shirt. What I would call a grandad shirt. When I was a student in Liverpool, it's full of bars. It's full of sports bars and cool shops. When I was there, it was alternative bookshops and second-hand shops. We now call them vintage, we call them retro. When did we start calling them vintage stores? When did we start calling them retro? But in those stores, there were lots of shirts, vintage shirts, grandad shirts, Victorian shirts. And I would wear them as a student, just like I'm wearing this now. This is a modern one, okay? And it started, and I would pick them up for 20p. I would wear them. In 2005, I came to India. It was the first time I came to India. I came to Delhi. I was in Delhi for 3 months. And I was with lots of artists and artist retreats. And I went up to Darjeeling. I went to Dharamshala. I came to Jaipur. And one day somebody said, shall we go shopping? And I started to think about the shirts I wore when I was a student. The grandad shirt, the kind of shirt I'm wearing. And I thought, oh yeah, I'd like a curtain. So our Indian host took us to a store in Delhi. Where did they take us? Fab India. Okay, we went to Fab India. And I bought 3 shirts. This is one that I'm wearing. This was it after I came home. This was in Germany, and this is one of the shirts I bought in Fab India. I was going to wear another one today, but 10 years, you know, it's not being kind to me. I did bring it with me. And so, that's my second shirt story. My third shirt story, next slide. In 2008, I got married to my wife, and we had an Indian-themed wedding. And we went to a store in London called Devotion Clothing. It was in Tooting, and the woman who ran it was a middle class. She travelled to India, she sourced clothing from India. So we have this international connection. And I bought a long curtain, long white wedding curtain, pyjama trousers that I wore on my wedding day. My wife's dress is a Rajasthani style, but we did a kind of silk dress, beautiful. And we got married in Scotland. So the idea of shirts travelling from one place to another, and we tell stories in the clothes. For our wedding, for our honeymoon, where did we come? Where did we go for our honeymoon? Sorry, India. Yeah? We stayed in Jaipur. We stayed at the Samodha Valley and then went out to the tents and then went up to Jodhpur. So there's that relationship between the Victorian shirts and the shirts we wear, and that story that keeps going through us. And in my wardrobe now, every day, I look at the clothes that tell stories of my life. This one came from ASOS, fast fashion. I have another one, the same style, that I had made that came from a company called, I think, Storytown. They're in Norfolk. They made bespoke garments. I bought it for £100. All these shirts are in my wardrobe and tell different stories. The last shirts I bought, I came to India last April and August. And in August, because in April it was 45 degrees in Mumbai, it was hot. So I bought linen shirts, the same style. So all the clothes that we have in our wardrobe tell stories about us and have a meaning and become meaningful. And so, in terms of materials and material culture, it's the stories that we tell through our garments. Next slide. And I'll just let you and clothes become transitional objects. We live our lives through them, we pass them on. But what's the story that piece of clothing could tell? You must watch on YouTube a film called The Plastic Bag. It's by the film director called Rahiman. It's narrated by Werner Herzog, and it's a story of a plastic bag. And it's the story from the plastic bag's point of view. The plastic bag starts its life. It gets food put in it, but then it gets dirt put in it, then it gets thrown away, then it gets shredded, then it goes somewhere else. And at the end of this, the plastic bag says, I wish I could die. I wish my maker had never made me, because it will last forever. Graham Harman, who talks about new materialism, who talks about object-oriented ontology, so how objects exist and create our lives around us and for us, talks about four things. They said that objects have four qualities. Real objects with real qualities, sensual objects with sensual qualities. And in that way, all things are objects. Now, clothing, what happens to it when it leaves you? Timothy Morton, and this is a last few things, he talks about the lives we live through objects and what they will become. He talks about air as being an object. We breathe it and we breathe it out. He talks about global warming as being an object. He talks about the stories of entangled things with entangled lives. So whenever we touch objects, they become entangled with who we are. And in terms of that, what happens with those clothes? What happens with those stories? And what happens with those stories as it carries on? The shirts that I've worn, what happens after they're gone? Think about the lives that they lead. Thank you very much.